Hello, everyone. So
Great.
excited to be with you for our next webinar. As you can see, JP is here with me because we're going to be co-presenting. So we're really excited to tag team this and get to share together and learn together. JP, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hello to everyone. Greetings from Wajak Bujak, Nyungar lands in Western Australia, the Swan River Basin, coastal plain bioregion.
Mm. And of course, I'm calling from Baritar, Colombia, the ancestral home of the Guane people. And I'm really excited today because we're going to talk about a topic, really two topics blended together that just feel really important. One of them is how we personally, so JP and myself will tell our personal stories of how we came to feel that it really matters to regenerate the earth. And also to begin using this as a way of looking at how individual purpose can map to the group's purpose. And we can start, we'll begin navigating into a process of how we can align our personal dreams, values, visions for the future with those of others so that we can come into alignment and co-create. And to help us get started today, I thought with a topic like this, that it might be nice to have a little candle moment of just calm and connection and alignment to say the fire is warmed. We are at the hearth, like in the cozy living room for those of you moving into the autumn in the winter months, or maybe shaking off the last of winter, moving into the spring for those in the south, and that this is an opportunity for us to feel into the fires inside our hearts and how those align with what's happening in the world. So I wanted to light a candle for that. And so here it is. Um, and I'll put that out so I don't burn my hair. It's getting a little long now. I want to start by, I have a poll for all of you. And JP, it seems you're frozen. Can you hear me? Or did I lose you? Is everyone else there? Can someone just let me know in the chat if you're able to hear me? I don't know if JP is frozen just for me or for anyone else. But hopefully everything's working excellent. So you guys can hear me, but JP's connection isn't working. So hopefully her connection will come back quickly. In the meantime, I have a little poll for all of you. And so I'll share it right now. Here's the poll I'd love for you to answer. How much have you thought about why it matters to regenerate Earth? Oh, JP's letting me know that the power went out. I'll say, come back when you can. There we go. Hopefully she'll be able to join us soon. So I'm curious, how much have you thought about why it matters to regenerate Earth? Is this like a deep multi-year process you've thought a lot about? Maybe you've gotten some insights and clarity. It's something you're curious about, but don't really have good answers. It's something that you're honestly conflicted about, meaning you don't actually know why. Like, are humans good or bad for the planet? And how can we feel into that? Or is this a topic that's pretty new to you and that you're just curious? Like, what do we even mean by this? So I'm really delighted to see most of you, so far at least, are saying it's been a deep multi-year process. And that's definitely the case for me as well. I've been thinking about this for a long time in one form or another. And I see at least one person is honestly conflicted about it. And I gotta say, there were several years when I was conflicted about it too. And I thought maybe humans are bad for the planet. Maybe it'll be better if humans just go extinct and go away. And really, sat deeply with the pain and the sadness of a question like that. And then ended up coming to a place, it's a story that I'll share today, of really feeling that humans need to stick around and that the planet actually has very good use for us and that we can be net positive for planet Earth. So what we want to do today really is explore why it matters to regenerate Earth in personal story form. And I'm hoping that JP's power, she said her electricity went out. And so hopefully she'll be able to rejoin us. And if not, we'll just catch her story maybe later. But I really hope that she's able to be here with us today for the rest of this time. And I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation part, which today I'm going to give a very short slide presentation with just 4 slides, really just a set of prompts to help set the context for the storytelling. And then while waiting for JP to return, I will, I see JP may be back. Let me try inviting her again. Here we go. Let's see if this works, if she's here again. So yeah, I will be sharing my story, and the idea here is for us to each think about our own personal story and reflect on how it might relate to the others in this learning journey. How might we have different personal stories but shared alignment around a larger story? And how do we navigate whatever the differences might be to move into an alignment of collaboration and co-creation? And so with that said, I would love to just start the brief presentation mode to give us some visual prompts for this discussion. And so here we are. And first thing I want to say is, when we look at the Earth from space, it's really breathtaking and beautiful. And there's a phenomenon called the overview effect, which is that spacewalkers and astronauts and cosmonauts and anyone who's been up in space looking down upon the Earth has had a transformation of conscience. And even many of them who are atheists had spiritual awakenings by seeing the Earth from above. There's something incredible about the beauty of the Earth as seen through the eyes of a human being.
Daddy.
And at least, sweetie, could you go talk to Mama? Because I'm giving a presentation right now. No, I can't, sweetie. Go talk to Mama about it. Go talk to Mama about it, sweetie.
I don't want Mama to hear this.
So what I really want to ask us is, how did each of us come to the question why regenerating the Earth matters, and how we personally feel about it? You know, was this a spiritual connection? Was it scientific knowledge? Was it some personal relationship to a specific place or to a specific species? You know, why did each of us come to a place where we feel like the Earth is damaged in some way and needs to be regenerated, and that humans should be doing it? And there's a deeper related question here that's maybe a little bit less pleasant. And that's this question. Why does it matter that humans might go extinct? Now, I think all of you know that I take very seriously the possibility of human extinction, and that while the probability is still relatively low, or at least the ability to predict whether human extinction is going to occur is really difficult to say. It's so complex and there are so many possible variables that we can't account for. And yet, with the scale of destruction of the biosphere, the globalized economy is pretty much a foregone conclusion of collapse and is already in process. But will this cause human extinction? Or will the mass extinction event that is starting to occur, caused by human activities, bring us down with it? And the question here is, if there is a possibility that humans could go extinct, why does it matter that we might? Is it really better for the Earth that we stick around? And if so, why? Are humans a positive and beautiful part of the Earth? Or is there something that the Earth can't do without her humans? Does Gaia need her semantic, language-creating, storytelling, imaginative, worldview-creating hominids who are capable of empathy, compassion, and analytic thought? Does Gaia need her humans? And why does that matter? I don't want to answer that question yet, but I'd like you to just think about it and feel into what comes up for you. Also, when we look at something like these planetary boundaries that I talked about in our kickoff webinar, where the Earth is destabilizing and we've crossed 6 of 9 planetary boundaries, and so there's a need to bring us back within those 6 planetary boundaries without going outside of the other 3. And this could be our shared purpose. We could, as all Earth regenerators, try to stop the extinction of non-human species, to drive land system change toward the restoration of healthy, complex ecosystems, to bring health and resilience and vitality to freshwater supplies, to stop putting reactive phosphorus and nitrogen into our soils and waterways and rebalance the biogeochemical flows, to slow down and reverse ocean acidification. See, these are things that we've already crossed some tipping points, and we could find a common purpose in regenerating the Earth to come back within the planetary boundaries. Is this our shared purpose, or is it something else? How do we find this shared purpose? And if there is a necessary future to keep humans from going extinct, if there's a necessary future for sustainable human cultures, how do we learn how to co-create it? And how do we do what's needed of us, what is required by the constraints of those scenarios that say, enough humans need to be rebuilding soils, enough humans need to be protecting native forests, and so on and so on. How do we learn how to co-create this necessary future? And this is something that is a major theme for us here at Earth Regenerators. I have this quote from my book, The Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth. And for me, it begins to answer the question, and it sets the stage for the story that I'm about to tell. And this is part of the answer of why I think regenerating the Earth matters. See, we can see how important it is that the Earth cultivated the ability to feel grief, sorrow, pain, and loss for the love of life within itself, because we as human beings who are part of the Earth can feel those things. So we must learn how to feel these energies as part of the natural regenerative endowment of our home planet if we are to become stewards and nurturers of life and service to life at planetary scales. And what I'd like to invite now is a bit of a conversation about this. And oh, JP, we've got some kind of a reverb effect. Don't know what's going on there. I'm going to toggle your mic to mute for a second and see if that helps.
Yeah.
And let's see if that works.
I think I better go.
I don't know if you can mute yourself because it's not letting me mute you. That's frustrating. Well, we're having some technical challenges today. So hopefully JP will be able to rejoin us. And let me just see, can I mute myself? Yes, I can mute myself, but for some reason it wouldn't let me mute JP. Well, JP, whenever you come back, I'll invite you back in a minute, and I'll mute myself, and we'll see if that works. But yeah, this is a topic that, in spite of the technical difficulties, I really hope that JP is able to join and share her story, because what we want to do is share how each of us personally came to a place of aligning our lives with action toward a regenerated Earth, because somewhere deep inside ourselves, we feel this really, really matters. And while we're waiting for JP, and hopefully she'll be able to come back and the technology will work, let me tell my story. My story is actually a painful one in the early days, and it grew into something that has helped to heal me in ways that I didn't even know were possible. So let me go back to when I was 3 years old. I grew up on a farm in the country in a working class poor family in Missouri in the middle of the United States. And even at the age of 3, when I was in preschool, I was surrounded by a lot of kids that were really mean. There's a lot of bullying, a lot of nasty behavior. Kids that would do things like take fireworks and stick them in the mouths of frogs and then laugh when they blew up the frog. And I was really sensitive, so it hurt me to see children and to see non-human animals being hurt by this aggressive and violent behavior. And I started to wonder if maybe there was something wrong with me. And this took the form for a long time that I wondered what was wrong with humanity. How is it that we could put pollution into our waterways? How is it that we could destroy giant trees that are so beautiful and so precious? And it took me a long time to see that my pain as a human being with empathy, who was able to feel this empathy for the rest of nature, was actually part of nature, and that I was also part of humanity. And so in the early days, I just felt like, the humans need to fix our environment because we need it for us. Humans are going to go away if we don't fix this. And then I started seeing how nasty and polarized our politics was. I learned about the history of slavery, of sexism and violence against women. I learned about oppression and violence from many of our religious institutions. And I just lost more and more of my faith in humanity without realizing I was losing faith in particular cultural expressions and particular kinds of institutions. Because all the while I knew human beings, I knew people that were wonderful and beautiful, and that I loved them and I loved being among them. And I didn't want humanity to go away. So it's something that stayed with me for a long time. And when I went to graduate school and learned about climate change and Earth system science and got a really deep understanding of what was happening to the planet and how scary our future was, I had to ask myself, humans are just doing this and it's exponential. Like every year it's more intense, it's faster, it's bigger, and it's growing more extreme and it's accelerating. We're fucked. Like there's nothing we can do. And I actually got really depressed because somewhere inside of me, I didn't want humans to go away, but I saw all of the destruction to the rest of life that I couldn't protect because what the human system was doing was too big for me to stop it. And so it'd be easier for me to just turn off my sensitivity, to stop feeling that pain and loss, to ignore it and be distracted by it. And yet I had this knowledge, trained as a climate scientist, that I felt like I had a responsibility to do something with that knowledge. And the place where I really started to gain an insight into why humans might need to stick around and we might need to become regenerators of the earth was when I learned cognitive linguistics. I learned how the human mind works. I learned that the human mind can project a reality onto the world and that reality may or may not correspond with what's actually out there. And that shamans using plant medicine could connect to intelligence of non-human animals and plants. And that humans could enact plays and theater and create music and make mathematics and scientific insights and really do beautiful, beautiful things. I fell in love with humans. And for about 10 years, my wife and I grappled with whether we should have a child. Like, should we invest our love in the future of humanity because we believe humanity should stick around? And what we found was that we did believe in humanity and we chose to have a child and we deeply committed ourselves to this path. Now, why was that? For me personally, it was that I came to realize that humans have created new capacities for insight and perception for the earth. The earth can know and love herself through her humans in uniquely human ways. And I'll give one example. Humans are capable of experiencing reverence and awe. This feeling of being overwhelmed and having our minds blown and our hearts opened up to the sheer awe and magnificence of something that is beautiful beyond our comprehension. And we're able to comprehend that we can't comprehend. And this creates awe, and it creates humility, and it creates reverence. And we have no evidence that any other animal or plant or fungi or bacteria in the history of life on Earth can feel reverence and awe. So let's assume for a moment that it's true, that humans are the only animal, the only living being that can feel this. Then the Earth gained this ability, and the Earth will lose it if the humans go away.
Daddy.
Yes, sweetie.
Mama didn't say nothing, so I have to tell it to you.
Well, sweetie, but Daddy's presenting right now, so I'd like you to wait just a minute.
Hey, but I
Yes, sweetie.
remember we have to go to the park now because they open now because there's fireworks.
Yeah, but it's
outside.
raining outside, so we don't want to go out into the rain while there are fireworks going off. Go tell Mama about it. Go tell Mama.
I already told her what to do.
And so what I'd like to say is, I've come to a place where I see the earth having many kinds of consciousness, and some of them seem to be uniquely human. And humans can create systems of perception, like how your eyes are connected to your brain and process information to create an image. Well, what does a satellite do from space? It looks at reflectance of radiance, of electromagnetic energy, and interprets it and makes images, just like our eyes do. So we, as part of the earth, can build eyes that are up in space looking down on the earth, and the earth can see herself. Just like how I can have this mirror right here, and I can look at myself in the mirror. The earth can do that with human eyes. And for me, this is something powerful and beautiful that uniquely humans, at least sweetie, daddy's presenting right now. Go talk to mama, please. I'm going to try and see if JP can come on the screen to share her story. And hopefully it'll work. So JP, I'm going to try again, and I'll mute myself while you're here, if it does work, so we don't have that reverb effect. And the thing I want to say is that this ability to recover my deep love for humanity and appreciate something that may be unique and uniquely beautiful about humans, and that the earth actually deserves it. The earth deserves me. The earth deserves humans, has been one of the most healing, innocent, powerful forms of love that I've gained as I've tried to regenerate the earth. Now I'm going to mute myself and I'll this bit.
No.
I don't know what's happening. I just muted your mic and I don't know what's going on. Ah, frustrating.
Yeah. It's just me. If the video goes on, mute me. This is Telstra.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah. Do you happen to have two mics on somewhere? Or two browsers with Crowdcast on them that might be communicating with each other through the sound? Of course, Gail's saying maybe it's solar flares. Gail, I like your thinking. Yeah, JP, do you have earbuds or something? Could you try putting in headphones and see if that works?
Daddy, I need.
And I'll unmute you just to see if we can get this figured out.
I closed the other tab. That's awful.
So it's still doing it.
That one's good.
This one is very big for me. Daddy,
Um, Try again. Are you still there?
I'm still here. How's this?
Oh, it's working. Awesome. Then whatever you did, I think it worked. So JP, I pass it over to you.
You have no idea how many. Can you see me? Because I don't know if you can see me. I can't see me.
No, I can't see you. Your video's off, but we can hear you.
Okay. I think you have no idea how many times Crowdcast made me re-log in.
Please.
So I think there were probably 4 Crowdcast tabs open, and that was what was happening. So how do I turn my video on?
I'll turn on for you if
Okay.
I can.
You can.
There you are.
I'm back. Oh my gosh.
Yay.
Hi everyone. I missed the party. I just got the last bit.
The party is starting now. You've arrived.
No. I did get a little bit of what you were sharing at the very end. So thank you for that. And it's appropriate because this session is really about perspective taking, right? That's really what it's about awareness of self and awareness of us as collective. Yeah. So I think I heard a part in between all of the relogs of your story about choosing to bring Elise into the world at this time. And so, yeah, shall I start with my story or shall we? Because I realize, normally we'd be concluding the webinar about now and going into conversation. So how would you like to go ahead?
I think everyone wants to hear your story, JP. Please.
Well, I have a story, and I also have I have a tour. I have some nice slides. So how about I go into the slideshow and tell my story briefly in the middle? How about that? Can we do that?
Perfect.
Okay,
Please.
great. So now how do I share screen? This is my first, up here. Okay, so share screen, and okay, open. No, it's not letting me. This is really just the most, for me as a technologist, this is very frustrating. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's why. You know what? It closed my presentation. That's why. Okay, here we go. Let's see if it will do it now. Yes. Okay, share. Can you see anything?
Nope, it hasn't.
Okay, so here's what we'll do. I'll tell my story, and I'll record my little tour for you all and post it. So I have a little tour of the ACT matrix and how it dovetails so beautifully out of psychological flexibility. Yeah, and I'll tell my story, and we'll have time for conversation with everyone. Yes. So how I became an earth regenerator. The story begins with, I'm originally Canadian. I'm a prairie girl. And my father very wisely moved us from minus 30 Celsius average winter temperatures to warm and sunny California. And first we were in Southern and then Northern California. And when we moved to Northern California, we moved into a community that was intensely dry. So I grew up in drought as a young person. Our homes, they were the same kinds of homes that Steve Jobs was inspired by, and he lived in them. And the challenge was that where we were, there were very few trees. There were golden rolling hills covered with grass, which crisped in the summer, and our homes would go up in the flames in 7 minutes flat. They would burn to the ground in 7 minutes flat. So because it was so dry, we were water aware, hyper water aware. We took 3-minute showers, had special bathroom behaviors, and had to spend many fearful days on the roof with a bucket and a hose, hoping that the flames, which were tearing across the hills, even in those days, wouldn't get us. So that was kind of the first formative awareness that I had. And when we moved into that neighborhood from somewhere else, I was very different. And so my difference made me an instant pariah where we were. And I sought my solace, of course, in books and in nature, and in particular with a book in nature. that would be my place of safety and joy. So my refuge was nature. And I had also at that time a very vivid dream life. I think I was about 10 when I was visited by a dream. And it was a terrifying dream. And it was a bit of a random dream because there was no context for it. And I was a fly on the wall in a slaughterhouse. And I was watching what was happening to the animals. And I woke up crying and then thought about it and went out and announced to my family that I was a vegetarian from that moment forward. So, yeah, I really have to presence that my confusion as a child was about cruelty. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't grok how humans could be cruel to each other and cruel to animals. And it was just foreign to me actually still is in many regards. So that is what started it. I spent summers, I was very fortunate. I spent my summers at a summer camp that was near Yosemite. So that meant that I was hiking every summer, the big hikes in Yosemite, and got better and better and carried heavier and heavier packs and did longer and longer trips. And again, we were taught respect for nature in that environment and for our fellow travelers. There are, I mean, as far as the natural environment goes, beyond stunning. So I had that regular, wonderful connection with the land. And then we moved out of the suburbs and into the country. And I grew up in a very small town. It's almost laughable when people say they grew up in a small town. I say, "Oh, really? How small?" And they'll say, and I get to share that where I was for the remainder of my growing up, the sign still says elevation 20, population 50. So it was a rural place. We were 15 miles from anything, but we were very neighborly. We knew everyone. And 15 miles away was the nearest cafe, where of course we always went. And one of the things that always stuck with me is that in the station cafe, there was a community table, a big community table. And that's where we would all go and gravitate and sit and just drop in with each other. The people in the restaurant knew what we wanted to order. It was a socially unifying experience. It was so beautiful. We also took care of each other in the disasters that happened, which in that environment were also fire. I have actually seen the speed of fire firsthand because, yeah, this is another side story about that, but we were doing tiny house living. My father and brother had a horse ranch fantasy, so all the investment went into the horse ranch, and we lived in little single-wide mobile trailers with a fantastic view of the rolling hills and the ocean. And so one day when I was washing dishes in the kitchen, I heard something strange. And because we were overlooking a bluff, I saw a line of cows. It was like a chorus line of cows coming towards me really quickly. Now that never happens, right? It doesn't happen. And then I saw the line of fire following them and how quick it was. So we had fires there too. And we also had floods. So the beautiful thing was how people took care of each other in that environment, and how the contrast became very strong for me between that life and the life of living in the suburbs. So more on that connection with nature, and also dealing with upset, cataclysm, complexity, which is where my slides that I'm going to show you later starts, right? Welcome to the 21st century. We are complexity upon complexity upon complexity, and must find our way to navigate through individually and collectively, and do the best we can to make sense of things together. So yeah, now for the sort of the later chapter of Earth Regeneration for me, I became a technologist of all things. You know, I started life as an artist in music and performance, and long story short, I wound up in technology and in the bleeding edge of technology. I used to be a futurist. I call myself a recovering futurist now, A, for the laugh, and B, because I get to say that I'm on a mission to recover us, to recover the future from dystopia. And I think many of us are on that journey as well. So yeah, the story there is I had to start practicing what I preach. I was really excited about the possibility of what we are doing now today. So those of us who were visualizing the future in those days, we got most of what has happened now right. It was just going to be 20 plus years in coming. And so I had to actually build some of these future applications, and one of them took a year and a half and 14 hours a day and 6 days a week. And those were days when I was really deeply building technology. And I made myself sick. I made myself really, really sick. And so I had to unplug from that world. And I did a left turn into, as I was healing myself, I did a left turn into integral medicine and really understood the requirements and also the corollary of our somatic selves with the earth, and realized that I had been living at that point for many years with many others from the neck up, and I was utterly disconnected. And it was the beginning of a series of dark nights of the soul. I had a spiritual awakening as a result of this illness and almost dying, and many people have that. And they were a series, they were a spiral, and they had a cycle. And the cycle was I'd have an insight, and then I'd go numb. And then I'd find my way back into my heart and live there for a while, and then come back up into I have no idea what to do next. And then I'd have another insight, and it spiraled out. And it took a while for me to understand this process was what I now call in myself the Great Thawing, right? It was a big thaw, because in response to trauma, and I did have a very traumatic childhood, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And so many of us, if we have dealt with trauma, we are frozen. And the unthawing process can take a while. It can be painful and scary and sensitive. I was very lucky because I'm very determined. Discipline is not my problem. So once I began to acquire tools for self-awareness and self-compassion and healing, I took responsibility for it and have been engaged in that process for the remainder of my life, and I'm still in it. And I think all of us who are engaged in this amazing quixotic endeavor share this. We have to be aware that we are also in the process of healing as we are healing this planet. So there's a lot more to tell, but I'd love to hear from some other people. And I'm excited also to share with you guys about, because I know Paul's on, I have a lovely presentation, Paul, about the act matrix, pro-social style, but I'll share that later. And yeah, that's enough from me.
Thank you for that, JP. I really like Mitty's comment, global warming actually helping humanity to thaw, which is just deeply resonant for me. And I really sense that regenerating the earth and regenerating humans, regenerating ourselves is the great work of our times. And that it's actually, as I've been learning, it's absolutely beautiful to do. Like, it's just so much fun when I get to do it with small children, and I get to watch now I'm watching all the new insects, and I'm having amphibians and reptiles starting to show up in my food forest. And, watching the guests arrive for the party as we create an ecological space for them with lots of niches. There's something beautiful about how the rest of life shows up. I would love to invite any questions that people have to write them in the Ask a Question box. I know that Paul already asked one, and I would love to be able to invite Paul onto the screen, which I suspect may mean that JP will have to leave so that we only have two on at a time. So we'll try it and see. Paul, I'm going to invite you on the screen to answer this question with me, and let's see if it works. So Paul, have you received your invitation to join me? Let's try again. Nope, it's not It's not working. It might be because you have JP leaves. There we go. Let me try inviting you one more time. See if these technical problems continue or not. Looks like they're continuing. Okay, it's not working. Frustrating. But Paul asked this really interesting question. Joe, do you think the Earth cares that she can see herself? I have a play on logic for answering that question that actually feels really important. And it looks like maybe you are able to join me. So I'll let you come on and we can talk about it first before I give my answer. If you are able to join me, which looks like maybe you are. No, JP is still here and Paul hasn't come. Well then, in that case, do I think the Earth cares that she can see herself? I have a very clear, definitive, absolutely certain answer. The answer is yes. Do you know how I know that? I am part of the Earth, and I care that I can care for the Earth. And as a part of the Earth that cares about my ability to care for the Earth, I have just met the criteria of evidence to answer your question in the affirmative. So let me unpack that for a moment, though, because this is really important. Do you think the Earth cares that she can see herself? Well, there's this really interesting question is, what does it mean to be capable of caring? What does it mean to be capable of having empathy? And to be capable of having compassion? Yeah, Paul, I don't know why I won't let you on. The tech is just like, right now. Which is that the Earth will not care if humans care, if humans don't care that we care. And that's what's so amazing about, let's just lay out the numbers, 4.56 billion years that the Earth has existed. 3.6 to 3.8 billion years that there's been life on Earth. Almost all of that was single-celled organisms until about 700 million years ago. Multicellular organisms popped into being. And then flash forward to 6 million years ago with primates that are our hominid ancestors. We parted ways with our gorilla and chimpanzee and orangutan and bonobo cousins. And keep coming forward and you get Homo sapiens, the human that is capable of being wise. Capable. We're not always, we're capable. And we care, because there are some of us who really care. Now, what does it mean for a planet to have a species evolve with the capacity for empathy and compassion? The planet gains that capacity. And that's what I think is so incredible about humans integrating ourselves into the consciousness, the emergent collective consciousness, compassion and awareness of the planet, by the planet, for the planet, with her humans. How beautiful is that? And so that's my playful answer to your question, which actually isn't playful at all, because I take that answer very seriously. But I think this is super, super important. And I'd love to know if there are any other questions. Or also, if you don't want to pose a question, if you just have a comment you'd like to add in the chat of what you're thinking and what you're feeling right now. So you could ask a question or invite a topic. But since the tech isn't letting us play very well, it might be hard to get you on the screen. But I'd love if anyone has comments. Why does it matter to regenerate the Earth when humans might go extinct? And actually, JP, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, since the tech is working for you.
The video. You're not risking the slides. So I just want to follow on, from Paul's question, and remembering that we are. You know what? Somebody corrected. I was at a beautiful, beautiful conference here last week called Danju Korlini, which in the local language means walking together. And it was an Aboriginal-led conference, and it was really extraordinary. And somebody there reminded us that we are not part of the Earth. We are the Earth. To really remove that separating language when we remember to do it. And what has helped me, and one of those insights that I had in my Great Thawing, was we are all cells in the body of the earth. We are all cells in the body of the divine, of the cosmos, of the divine, of all of it. And the funny thing that occurred to me in that is that every cell in this ecosystem of our human self, we're way more like a tree, right? Because we provide habitat for so many creatures, right?
Yeah, look right here, habitat, habitat,
Habitat. Habitat's
habitat.
everywhere. We're that. And it dawned on me that, all cells are essential. Every aspect of that ecosystem is essential for its optimum functioning, right? And yet, in our own bodies, a brain cell may not have a lot to talk about with the toenail cell, but they are equally essential to the overall healthy functioning of the whole. And that really helps me. I just return myself, and it also solves the sort of individual consciousness versus collective consciousness. And do I lose myself if all of that nonsense goes away when we realize that we are an essential component of the whole always, and we can't be disconnected. So that was just what I wanted to add.
This is a great place to fold in Gertie's comment in the chat. She says, you talk about Earth evolving, and I'm wondering about the larger story that we are, namely, the unfolding of the universe. We are the universe becoming conscious of itself. This is something I thought about a lot when I learned that there were different metaphors for God. So God can be a person, like, the white man with a beard on the mountain, or the woman shaman in the forest, but God can be a person. And turns out that's not a very helpful extended metaphor because it limits it to only what humans can be. And God can't be transcendent from another universe, from a different realm, because of the way that our minds create concepts of God that depend on our bodies. And so if you take away the human body and the way the human body makes a mind, the concepts of a disembodied mind would have to exclude all the embodied parts of mind, and it'd be left with this grossly diminished concept of a disembodied or transcendent God. And what you're left with is God as immanence, which is that God is the innately intelligent, creative consciousness of the universe itself. That's the only one you're left with when you start piecing it together conceptually. And that's really powerful to think of consciousness as this way of embodied awareness and intelligence in context and in relationship. And when we place, the God concepts there, it's really powerful. But just more generally, this is something humans do. We have this ability to articulate these aspects of consciousness, and it's quite powerful. So Gertie, I think you're really onto something. Oh, and of course, Paul's got a follow-up question. It says, I have a sense that okay, I'll start answering so we can tag it here. Says, I have a sense that we are the earth and also that we are like cancer on the earth. I do not want cancer. Maybe the earth does not want us. I recognize there is deep reservation about humanity in this. I think I can get on video now if you like, but it's not giving me the option to invite you, Paul. The button disappeared. Watch me go, another time. I think what you're getting at, Paul, is really important. And this, to really understand this, for those who aren't familiar, one of Paul and my dear friends, David Sloan Wilson, has solved the riddle of individual versus group selection in evolutionary biology. And it's now called multi-level selection. And in human groups, there's multi-level cultural selection or cultural multi-level selection. And cancer can be understood as a breakdown of multi-level selection. Individual cells in my body lose programming of cooperation, and they begin to undermine cooperation in my body until I either kill all the cancer cells or the cancer cells kill me as the organism. And this pattern of nested levels of cooperation, where if one level of cooperation breaks down, it can become pathological to the health of all other levels, is a way of seeing human culture, but not human species. because there are examples of human cultures that do not behave like cancer. And there are examples of human cultures that do. So this tells us that it's not humans that are the cancer, it's particular kinds of human cultures. And it turns out it's all empires and civilizations during the Holocene, which is the last relatively warm period in the last 11,000 years. And that, well, as JP's saying on the screen, wetico. And this is really important because humans are not a cancer on the earth, but some patterns of human behavior are. And so if we are to be regenerative of the earth, we must learn how multi-level selection works. Thank you, David Sloan Wilson. And then apply that to how we build our cultural contexts of relating to the rest of the world. And that helps us disentangle this. I'll have a little one, please. Thank you, sweet.
I mean, look for a little one.
And I see Simona has a question here in the chat. Thank you, Elise. Says, how come some humans are born with the capacity of having empathy for the non-human beings and some are not? And live their obliviousness of them being part of the earth. And, well, sweetie, because I need to answer this really important question. JP, would you like to jump in and take an answer at this so I can give Elise a moment of attention?
Yes, I can. Let's see if you can see me. Yes, you can see me.
We can see you.
Okay, cool. So how come some humans are born with empathy and some seem not to?
Are you done with your cow?
You know, I'm with you, Simona. I don't understand the difference, but what I believe, or have come to believe, is that we actually, this was kind of a big insight for me a couple of years ago when I was doing the inner transformation work. And usually we're working with some aspect of ourselves, of our prior experience that caused trauma and triggers, and we can go back and heal that experience in ourselves. So much inner work is reparenting, where we didn't get parented, and shoring up and filling in those gap places. And there are various responses to trauma. And I started going in, and again, somatically is a really amazing way to go in and do the discovery work on yourself. I started getting a lot of experience. I get little movies in my head. When I do the work, I'll follow a feeling. It'll show me a movie. There might be a physical thing involved, and I can walk through that whole process with anyone. It's very helpful because it will take you to what is asking to be healed, and it's all stored in your body, so you can clear it. And I started getting experiences and movies of things that were not in my own present lifetime. And it took a while because some of them were really dark for me to really understand how connected we are and why so many cultures honor ancestors, because we carry our ancestors inside of us genetically in the field, right? So every one of us is carrying all of our ancestors. So I got curious, right? How many ancestors do we actually have? And thanks to the wonderful world of information we now live in, could actually answer that question. And it was a bit of a shocker. 6 billion with a B, at least, is what has been calculated for each of us. Now, one of my degrees actually has a lot of math in it. And I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. And then I did the math. And it's really only a little more than 30 generations. It's not that many because we forget it's us, 2 parents, and each of them have 2 parents, and so on and so on. It doesn't take very long to get to 6 billion. So consider that each one of us is a total miracle, carrying in all of the trauma and terrible experiences, but also the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of 6 billion humans before us. And we have the opportunity to redeem it all if we choose.
And something else that I'll add is something called neurotypic diversity, which is why 1% of every population studied is psychopathic. and that sociopaths are a little bit less common, but they exist as well. And thanks to the work of Gabor Mate and people like him, we now know that psychopaths and sociopaths are normally not violent unless there's child abuse. And so what's interesting is that people can actually have a brain that just does not process empathy very well. And people can have a brain that processes emotions very differently from other people. So like take, one example would be autism, where the brain of the autistic brain does not work like the non-autistic brain. And I only say this to say the key thing about how evolution works in all aspects of life is that a population has diversity of behavioral and anatomical capacities. And that diversity is what allows selection to occur. You can't have preferential inheritance unless there is differentiation, unless there's variety. So variety is the spice of evolution, is like literally true. And so part of our variety is neurotypic, which is just another way of saying brains that process emotions and information differently. And this actually leads to different kinds of problem solving and different kinds of strategies for relationships that may be very well adapted to particular environments and very poorly adapted to others. And so some people caring more than others is part of that neurotypic diversity. And it's just an inheritance of the variety of species having populations with diverse capacities. And so this is just part of how it all works. And so I want to add this piece to say that we can have a non-judgmental and also scientifically rigorous way of just recognizing people are very different, lots of different ways people can be. And it's actually our diversity that enables us to be resilient at the species level. And that's really important for the future of humanity.
Joe, what comes to mind as you're speaking this is your pulling up of the pioneering invasive grasses where you are. And I'm thinking about the current sociopathic preference of our culture to reward less than kind behavior. And that maybe that is part of our job right now, is to uproot invasive species and make space for everyone. Maybe make space for a little more kindness. It's not about getting rid of them, but it's about moving it away from encroaching and choking off all other life.
It's really interesting you say that, because what I'm getting really sensitive to right now, and in a more advanced practice of connecting my body to ecological development, is that in the food forest where we've been pulling the invasive grass and then taking the dirt that's in the roots and breaking it apart and making a mulch layer so that the native seeds that are either present or that blow in or are carried in by dispersers are planting and germinating, is now that there are ground covers of bushes and shrubs with flowers, lots of pollinators came, insects mostly. And after the insects came, that's a food supply. So now lizards and birds are coming in greater numbers. And there's this accumulation of biodiversity, and my body is sensitive to it. Like today, there was a big orchid. There's a type of bee that looks like a bumblebee, but we now know it's a solitary bee that only pollinates orchids, because there are a lot of native orchids here in the tropics. And I saw one of those bees in the food forest section for the first time today. Also, there's been only one dragonfly, but today I saw 4, and when I'd only seen 1 up until today. So I'm attuned to the arrival of niche fillers because I'm creating a context of growing diversity. And so,
from the invaders, and including the invaders. Yes.
By decolonizing the grass, which is the colonizer, decolonizing it in a way that creates fertility and fecundity for diverse life.
Beautiful.
So we're right at the time, and Paul is sharing something really nice in the chat, saying he wrote a blog called I Am Cancer and has given a link to it. So thank you for that, Paul. And Julian is saying here we can start to see how debilitating modern schooling and managerial capitalism are with their push for homogeneity. Hell yes, Julian, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And as Simona is saying, thank you, Simona, our resident biologist, a variation, selection, and inheritance work in all populations, not just humans. So these insights apply everywhere that evolution is occurring. And so I'm happy to do more teach-ins on evolution and cultural evolution in particular as we go along.
We love them.
But,
we love them, Joe.
What I want to invite for us to transition into the community calls and then to wrap up today is to say, JP and I had a really nice, and actually Daniel and the rest of our facilitation, we're like brainstorming lots of ideas for this week's call, and lots of things came up, and we ended up coming to a place of realizing if we shared our personal stories of how we came to be regenerators of the earth, we would begin to create a context of how there are different perspectives and how different perspectives are needed for us to align around a shared vision. In this case, planetary scale. Holy cow, that's complex. How do we do it? So that we can go into the community calls this week and start to explore how to build on the psychological flexibility that we talked about last week and start to direct it toward perspective taking and alignment toward shared purpose, so that we will then be ready next week to start talking from this shared experience to start talking about shared purpose, which, as you all may recall, is Eleanor Ostrom's core design principle number 1, shared purpose, shared identity. And so we'll be exploring this with the richness of today and this week's calls. Well, okay, Elise, but just wait one moment because I'm going to say bye to all of our friends and then I'll be with you. And you'll have all my attention. Thank you, sweetie. And so, JP, is there anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, just that it dovetails really beautifully. If you come from psychological flexibility through what we're doing this week, perspective taking, self-awareness, being able to look at a whole, I've forgotten the word, but anyway, from a consciousness behind consciousness, that we can actually observe our own consciousness and how we behave. We can take ourselves out and watch our behavior as ourselves individually and as groups. When you take it from there into now what really matters to me and what matters to us as a group, that's core design principle 1. You're doing it from that space of knowing what matters. So I'll put some of that in the slides I'm going to share with you guys. But I'm really looking forward to the conversations this week. Thank you, everyone.
I can feel the warmth of the community fire being with you today, JP. So thank you for sharing this conversation. It's so beautiful to get to know you better and to have this sharing. Just mwah. And I'm really excited about our community calls. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening or morning for those of you much further ahead of us on the line of horizons. We'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.